We're very privileged to have the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Mr. Dean Macpherson. Well done, 10 months in the job. I think everyone is a lot happier that you're in the job, and when the budget's announcement got announced, everyone is quite confident that that is going to be put into the right projects. So Dean, I don't know if you can give us a little bit of a background in terms of your history in politics and how you got to this point.
Thanks, Ryan. It's great to be in a real special part of the world, Ballito, not too far from my home, in my home province of KwaZulu-Natal. And yeah, it's been an interesting 10 months. Had to learn a lot on the job, but I think that we're starting to make progress, which is really exciting. And my career really dates back to probably 2008, when I first met a much younger version of John Steenhuisen, when he was a councillor in Durban North for the political party that I'm a member of, the DA. And he was leading the Durban DA caucus in the eThekwini municipality. And I met him. He was a very enthusiastic, energetic young man, and just his love for community service, for being able to get things done, just really intrigued me. And I was working at that time in a textile manufacturing business, family business. And I just thought to myself, this really interests me, and I quite like the sort of the cut and thrust of politics, and maybe this is something I could get interested in. So I got involved in my local DA branch in 2008 in Durban North, and then became a councillor in 2009. And was on the eThekwini municipality for 5 years, and then went to Parliament in 2014, and then got appointed as a minister in 2024 in July. So it's been quite a road, but I've just turned 40 this year, so it's I feel like it's been almost like a lifetime. But everyone keeps reminding me that politicians only really enter into politics sort of 60s or thereabouts. So maybe I'm coming to the end of my career in the first part of my life, and I've done it a bit differently. I don't know.
Like me, you're based between Durban and Cape Town, and we were just chatting before we got onto the podcast. Is that the lifestyle in Natal is totally underappreciated in the country, and how a gun against our head, we'd probably say that we prefer living here as opposed to Cape Town, and I think that's going to lead me on to the first question. There are obviously major concerns around the country with infrastructure, and I just want you to explain what your role is within governments and how you sit within a variety of different departments, because obviously you get a lot of stones thrown in your direction, and maybe if you could make it clear about what you do and how your department functions with other governments' departments.
It's great. Thanks, Ryan, because I get tagged on social media a lot for people who have potholes and the water's out. And we'd really love to do more than what we do at the moment, because our department is structured in two ways. So the public works side is all of the management of government assets, so all property and land, management of buildings, which we do to varying degrees, some from and not at all, to some quite well. And on that side, what we've really wanted to do is to say, if we have all these government-owned properties and assets, we should actually be running like a property portfolio where we generate income, where we use those assets to the advantage of government, and that we play in that space of property development, property ownership, and property management. So we've got a really good strategy around that, which we can get into. And then on the infrastructure side, there we are responsible through our entity Infrastructure South Africa to prepare, plan and package all major catalytic infrastructure projects around the country. So we have a group of people that are much smarter than you and I, that sit with calculators and computers and really put these plans together of how these projects can take place and how we can crowd in private sector investment in them to make them much more viable. So we've also, on that side, been working on the regulatory side, so we make it easier and quicker to fund projects, to get them off the ground, and to get them going. So we would really love to get more into into sort of the ownership side of those projects. We're not there yet, but I think that through the work that we're doing, showing what we can do in local government, and there's 4 pilot projects that we're doing across the country where we're effectively going to become the infrastructure implementers. So we're actually going to put those infrastructure projects into existence and then hand them over once they're complete. And then we're going to be able to show that there's a much better way and model of not only just planning infrastructure, but also implementing it as well. So some really exciting stuff. And public works and infrastructure used to be laughed about, it's the butt of many jokes.
Yeah.
But our goal is to really make it an economic driver for growth and jobs in this country. So really reorientating what we do, and everything is about our daily obsession, which is growth and jobs.
Yeah, look, from my side, I couldn't agree more. I think infrastructure is the framework that we need to do to encourage both local and foreign investment. If you look at the trillions that corporate South Africa is sitting on, there's something like $35 billionaire South Africans that are part of the South African diaspora. That is without even looking at foreign investment coming in. And it's amazing to see how much foreign investment is coming into South Africa in its current state. So we're talking of air. We're involved in a project. I sold a beautiful piece of land as Action Old Resorts on the Chapman's Peak Drive to an Abu Dhabi-based developer. He's actually asked me, so he's the junior partner. It would boggle your mind how much that land sold for. And he's calling himself a small developer in the UAE. He's got some senior partners. They've approached me to try find 3 other projects in the country. We're involved with a catalytic development on the northern urban edge of Stellenbosch called Devonbosch, where they're building a new town. They're building what they call the new Stellenbosch town centre with retail, commercial, and residential hospitality components that is going to be a driver for jobs. And that's a JV between a South African landowner and a Belgian-based property developer. And then up the north coast, you've obviously you've got the fantastic Club Med developments coming, which is again a South African French development. And then you got the Zimbabwe Lakes, which is going to have a Ernie Els signature golf course that's opening next month in a couple of weeks' time. That originated with Kuwaiti and UAE money. So it's amazing to see the amount of investment that is coming into the country, with us having slight instability with our infrastructure in some ways, and lots of instability in many of the big metros. I just wanted to touch on some of the public work side in terms of the 2 areas that we fly between. So in Durban, you were mentioning off air that you guys are looking at rehabilitating the old SAPS barracks. I just wanted to ask, what's the process in that? What are you guys doing? And then how do you get the private investment into that? Because on this podcast, there's going to be a lot of developers, a lot of property investors are going to be watching this and very excited about the prospect of partnering with governments to try to rehabilitate our CBDs in Durban, which is probably the easiest CBD to fix in terms of the size of it and what sits in between it. You got the busiest harbour in Africa, and you've got traditionally very upmarket suburbs and lots of sports and leisure infrastructure surrounding it. So there's a lot that's surrounding it, which makes sense that it should be able to be rehabilitated. But something like this could be catalytic. So could you just mention what you guys are planning there?
And we have the weather as well, because the winter in Cape Town for like a few months is dreadful. You can't even move. So I always say, Ryan, that I love coming back to Durban, and Durban is my home, and it's so much more relaxed here. And Durban, I think very soon is going to explode in property investment and development. And I say that because we are being very deliberate around looking at what we have and how to use that to drive growth. And so what we decided to do is, so we've got 88,000 buildings, 5 million hectares of land. There's no reason to own all of that. So what we're doing is we're looking at what are our core and non-core assets and saying, okay, well, let's start putting out some of our non-core assets into the market and saying, well, what we're going to do is we're going to make these available for development. We're going to put them into the market at zero cost. So that will be our equity investment into that. But you've got to, meet certain conditions. You've got to, be able to invest X amount of money into the development. You've got to make sure or prove to us that you've got, financial backing for it. Because, we only want serious people that are actually going to come and, not millions, but billions of rands worth of investment. And we think just from those properties, the 31, that we're going to generate 10 billion rand worth of private sector investment, new construction, which is amazing. We're going to create 40,000 jobs just in the construction industry and potentially 100,000 jobs in services related as well into those projects. And so, we then say, okay, what is the best use or of concept use for that building or for that development? And does it encompass residential, retail, commercial, etc.? And then we have an independent committee that looks at it and say, okay, on the back of that, that sounds like a good idea. We'll award that to you for 25, 50, 99 years. So we still retain the ownership of the property, and we actually generate income.
Okay.
And it's exactly what happened at the Cape Town V&A waterfront. So Transnet still owns all of that land. They did a JV then with the then DP World, and they split the profits between them. And that's exactly how we should be performing as an asset management property-based company. And we've had very, very strong interest in it, so much so that I actually had to extend the deadline by another month because these guys are putting together some really good technical information, which is what we require. We don't want sort of people submitting plans on sort of a napkin to us. We want serious offers being made, and that looks really, really strong. And then from there, we'll start to actually put together sort of more packaged development opportunities between the city, the province, and us nationally, so we can actually drive that regeneration. We can drive that development because we're of the view that construction in development is a strong marker for economic growth and for job creation. So it's hugely exciting, and I'd say to the team, we're just getting started. And if we can generate that kind of interest over the long term that we're doing now, I think that really bodes well for us. Government actually is the largest owner of land in this country.
It's amazing.
And we've got to start seeing it not as something to hold on to, but on something to use as an economic driver.
100%.
You hold on to this land for what purposes?
Yeah.
We've got to start using it. We've got to start putting it into the market to be used for growth. Because I was in the Middle East a couple of weeks ago, and the interest there on some of the stuff that we're doing is enormous. So, you can hold on to it for the next 30 years, 50 years. It's not going to do anything. Let's get it out there. Let's give it to people that have got the money to develop it, to create jobs. That's, the direction that we should be heading. Not hoarding, we should be letting go.
100%. So my view is the Golden Mile and everything surrounding Durban. If you had to mirror what the guys have done in the foreshore and had to mirror what the guys have done in certain pockets of the Waterkant and the CBD side of the Atlantic seaboard, and have like mixed use developments, you've got retail, commercial, residential, but probably suited more is a tourist element where it's apart hotels, which is in my view, a much better replacement to what the timeshare concept was, where people can own a title, sell a title, but still retain and get income from it. So it's an income generating asset. If we had to get that working in the Durban CBD, I think the turnaround time would be a lot quicker than anyone would imagine. To do that, obviously, then you need to tie in with local governments and get the services working again. You need to tie in with local police to get squatters out of those buildings and to police the CBD, police the Point area, police the Golden Mile and beachfronts. Are you guys working with those departments, or do you just work in isolation? Because obviously, looking from the outside in, the GNU I'm a massive fan of the GNU, and I think South Africa operates the best when we're operating as a collective, as an economic collective, as the people that represent the economic tax-paying population of South Africa, where we have this multicultural melting pot of ideas and of energies and of resources. But are you guys communicating well with the Durban municipality and with the local KZN governments in order to get and revive those projects?
So, I mean, I think the point that you're getting to is that, we on our own just can't, sort of fix everything. That there's got to be, collaboration between eThekwini municipality and the provincial government. And we do have good relationships with both of them. But at the end of the day, there are some functions that they have to fulfill, like policing, ensuring that infrastructure is built and maintained, making sure that they allocate enough money to those infrastructure projects. So we make inputs, we make views known on those. We also work together with them in various forums as well. But at the end of the day, they are separate spheres of government that we have to respect. But the quicker that they get on with that, the better it is, for the whole city and for the province. So I think we have a really good, capable provincial government, and I think that they are starting to make some really good strides. I think that the mayor of eThekwini is a decent chap. I've known him for a really long time. I think there are problems in that administration which we need to fix, because it's just the water cuts, as an example, in eThekwini are just unbearable and unrelenting, and that doesn't help sort of the business case for what we're trying to do. So there's got to be interventions there, and there's got to be a collective will to fix things. You can't look at us and say you must fix everything. That's just patently not our job to do so. We will do what we can where we can, but each person needs to take responsibility for their sphere of governance and responsibility. So I think that these things obviously don't take place overnight. I think Durban obviously has to catch up. KZN's been through a rough couple of years, so we've got to catch up. And it's not, if I was saying this to you earlier, and I've said this many times, even to the mayor of Cape Town, it's not to the benefit of Cape Town that the rest of the country doesn't do well. In fact, it actually puts Cape Town in a very difficult position.
I agree. Because
they cannot cope with the amount of people that are arriving there, and South Africa is not Cape Town.
Yeah.
And so South Africa has a lot to offer, but if you have a choice for people between functioning governments and dysfunctional governments, people will always migrate to the functional government side. So we've got to fix the dysfunction in local government so that we actually offer a whole, package to South Africa and to South Africans and to tourists, and we can actually, allow people to live where they want. And I don't think that people necessarily want to leave Johannesburg or Durban,
no.
But they're being forced to because of the lack of services that are being offered there and being maintained. So I think we all have a responsibility to intervene where we can, and to make sure that we have attractive offerings in all of our cities.
Yeah, so from my view, I think that South Africa is going to transform into a landlocked archipelago of excellence. So you're going to have the Cape as the sort of mother island, and then you're going to have these pockets around the country. And I think where we're sitting on the North Coast is one of those pockets of excellence. And I think having the North Coast in close proximity to Durban, if the North Coast wasn't the North Coast, I think Durban would probably be a lot further down than it actually is, because people who are based here are mostly Durbanites and have a long history in Natal and have a lot of business interests in the greater Natal economy. And to the best of my knowledge, Natal is still the second biggest economy after Gauteng. So like Gauteng, it's fundamental to South Africa, and I can't agree with you more. From a property perspective, is that it's so out of balance at the moment. If you look at where we're living at the moment, you live in the southern suburbs, so am I, is that there's very few properties on the market because people don't want to sell because they don't know where they're going to go. Look, that has got a little bit to do with the elevated interest rates because there's no fluidity in the market. But you've got a lot of demand chasing little stock. And if you broaden that, there's a lot of demand chasing schooling, chasing jobs down there. And it's not good for South Africa as a whole just to have Cape Town. We need Durban, we need Joburg, we need the Eastern Cape, Free States and the rest of the country. I hate to break it to everyone, Cape Town is South Africa.
Well, let me say this. Cape Town is South Africa when it works.
Yeah.
So Cape Town is a representation of sustained good governance since 2006.
Yeah.
Does that mean that there is no inequality in Cape Town? Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course there are places that have inequality. But the majority of money that is spent by the city of Cape Town actually goes into poor communities.
Yeah.
And that is just a fact of life. Now, you can compare that to any other place in South Africa, and Cape Town arguably is better on all of the metrics. And I find it fascinating that people go on at Cape Town as if there are no other poor areas in Durban or Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Let me tell you what, there are some places in Johannesburg that you wouldn't want anyone to live in. They are so poorly looked after, and that it is appalling, quite frankly. And so Cape Town is what all of South Africa could look like with good governance, and where the majority of money is spent in poor areas and on infrastructure. And here's an important point, Ryan, and this is the point I made to the city of Johannesburg the other day. Cape Town spends more money on infrastructure than Johannesburg, Durban, and Mangaung municipality combined.
It's crazy.
14 billion rand they spend on infrastructure in their budget every single year. Durban is like 3 billion. You can see where the problem is.
Totally unsustainable.
Johannesburg is 7 billion, and their backlog is 220 billion rand. It makes no sense. So, I get quite frustrated when people, you look at Camps Bay and think that that's a representation of Cape Town, or South Africa or Cape Town. It's not. It is a part of, of Cape Town. And just as in Johannesburg, you've got Alex and Houghton and Sandton next door to each other. There will always be those disparities, but it's how you approach them and how you deal with them.
But also from our side, would you rather have people spending money in the country, because that money does still flow into the country. So I was talking to a friend of mine who's selling the V&A waterfront. They're obviously selling in-house. 80% of people who are buying the V&A waterfront, but they're selling up to 160,000 rand per square meter, are South Africans. It blows your mind that everyone's under this misconception that everyone buying in the Atlantic seaboard and buying in those areas are foreign. Yes, you do have foreign investment. It's only really about 30% of the people who are buying. So would you rather South Africans going to go spend their money in Portugal or Mauritius or all these other golden visa opportunities, or rather keeping it in South Africa, where people who are working in Cape Town are going back to the Eastern Cape and uplifting their communities and everything else? So from our side, we need to look at Cape Town, as you're saying, as about how it can work in the rest of the country. And 20 years ago, Cape Town wasn't streets ahead of the rest of the country.
We've got to fix places where we are, because you don't want the middle class or the upper class moving out of Johannesburg and Durban, because that's going to exacerbate the problem of finances in those municipalities. So we've got to fix them. We've got to get them right, and we've got to say, what do we learn from Cape Town? Now, one of the biggest tragedies that I recall, someone reminded me the other day, is when these terrible water cuts started in Durban, the mayor of Cape Town offered their engineers to come and help here in Durban free of charge. They were going to pay for it. Municipality turned them down. The mayor turned them down and said, well, we're not interested. That's a tragedy, actually. And so, we shouldn't be trying to make the whole country Cape Town. I mean, that's not what we want. We should be learning from Cape Town. We should be learning from their governance model. We should be learning about their investment into infrastructure and say, how do we replicate that and take that into other places across the country? That's the point that we should be looking at.
Yeah, so look, I couldn't agree with you more. Prior to getting on air, we touched on a very exciting project that you're busy with in Hout Bay and the Hout Bay harbour. Do you want to just touch on that and what you guys are busy with?
Yeah, so I mean, if you look at actually how the V&A waterfront developed, that was still owned by Transnet. It was then done in a joint public-private partnership. It was probably one of the first major triple Ps in South Africa. And I think that the company that first developed it, DP World, which is a Dubai-based company, probably regrets selling that development to Growth Point, as it's now the jewel in their crown. And we're looking to replicate that now in Hout Bay. And you know Hout Bay quite well. I think Hout Bay is actually an incredible opportunity, and there's the beauty there. If you stand in the harbour and look outwards, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so we are looking to totally redevelop that and create almost like a waterfront 2.0, but which incorporates fishing for the local communities as well, the tourism side as well, and the commercial side, residential, and could create 10,000 jobs for that community, which is extraordinary. So we'll be putting out that for proposals probably in the third quarter of this year. We're busy with that, and that could be upwards of a 20 billion rand project on its own. So major and catalytic in its nature, job creating, tourism attraction, and so we're really excited about that as well. And doing that across all of the small harbours that we actually own. We think there's huge opportunity. Tomorrow I'll be in Saldanha Bay in Cape Town. I'll be meeting with the team there and saying what can we do in that harbour as well, because big potential there. So some really exciting stuff.
That is incredibly exciting. So again, anyone who's not in Cape Town, Hout Bay is almost, on a Cape Town perspective, a little bit forgotten about in comparison to London, Atlantic Seaboard, the peninsula, which has done extraordinarily well, North Hook, Komaki, Scarborough, the growth in Scarborough over the last 5 years, that as a property study would blow anyone's mind in terms of the capital growth.
I love that place. It's amazing. Very peaceful.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But all of those small towns actually have just exploded.
Yeah,
really.
but Hout Bay hasn't to that degree.
Correct. Yeah.
And I think if you had to look at it on a South African perspective, it is a little bit forgotten about like the rest of the country. And I think that harbour development, and I think from a hunt perspective, our very beautiful development that we're going to be involved with at Apart Hotel. Hopefully Apart Hotel, look, it has to go through all the developments tribunals and all the rest of it. But if that does get passed, it's going to be an amazing facility with access to like a mini marina and restaurants and all the rest of it. So I think Hout Bay could end up being the place to be in terms of a property investment moving forward. But in terms of, obviously there's a lot of pressure on the Cape Town CBD, and there is a huge amount of those apart hotels and Airbnbs, which is a problem that the Cape Town city are trying to resolve. But I actually view it as a positive. I think it's just the normal progression of a world-class city. But I think there are going to be commuter towns popping up around the Winelands and further east and further west. But that's going to require rail infrastructure, because anyone who's driven on the Cape Town roads will tell you it's a nightmare. So and I know that you're not directly involved, but I know obviously the party that you're a member of is directly involved. And I know that you're going to be indirectly involved because of the Infrastructure South Africa. But can you just touch on what the rail plans are for the Cape region?
Well, it took me an hour to drive from Newlands to Cape Town the other day. It was crazy. So the success of any city is also built on the backbone of commuter mobility. If people cannot get to work or cannot get anywhere, you are actually choking that city. And so, I fully support the City of Cape Town's desire to get hold of passenger rail. I think that's hugely important. it's something that we're pushing really hard to do. And I think that it's on the rider of to competent municipalities that can actually do so. So, I think that if you look at the My City program, My City Bus program, that's only got so far. But, millions more people actually use and need to use passenger rail. So I think that, Provis has got to where it can at the moment. They've obviously invested into new rolling stock. There's new blue trains, which are really nice. But the real cost behind passenger rail is obviously the maintenance of the rail, but also the continual upgrading of the signalling systems so that you can run trains closer together. Sort of trains running sort of every 15 minutes, they should be running every 5 minutes. That's the key actually to rail, and that's where the city wants to come in and partner with them. So we think also, there's good opportunities. We've seen how successful the Hout train was at that time. That is, fully, run by a private entity, a French-based company.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And we think that those kind of partnerships between local government, between national government and private sector would be key. I once took a train from it was Umlazi to Durban, and it was terrifying. What passengers actually have to go through. So we want safe, efficient rail transport. I think that it's entirely possible, but again, government has to say we can retain the ownership of the asset, but the running and the maintenance needs to be done by the private sector. That is the key to passenger rail.
And if that pilot project works, then obviously that you guys can roll that out potentially across the country.
It entirely makes sense. Across the country, we've got to get goods back onto rail. We are developing through Infrastructure South Africa a high-speed rail corridor between Pretoria and the Eastern Cape to move automotive cars and parts between the two. We want to make sure that we get coal that is being mined in Mpumalanga and shipped out of Richards Bay back onto rail. The trucks cannot keep choking those roads. There's some other projects we're involved in there. So we're doing what we can, but at least on the freight logistics side, but really on the passenger side, we've got to bring in local government and private sector investors to get that going.
Yeah, on a local front, imagine if you had a railway from Durban up to Underberg. All of a sudden you'd see that town flourish. It's a World Heritage site. It's absolutely magnificent, but you need to be able to transport people safely up there, and with the road system at the moment, it's not great. Just to touch on roads quickly, and I know that you're not SANROL, I know that you're not involved, but the N3 corridor, and that's been going on now for close to a decade. Is there any light at the end of the tunnel getting that infrastructure finalized?
Well, building a road like that is hugely complex. Someone said to me that, they don't mind the inconvenience because they can actually see their money being spent well. And those roads you've got to continuously upgrade and maintain, to keep the volume of traffic and the volume of goods moving. It's obviously hugely important to have that road between Johannesburg and Durban just on a trade basis, well serviced and well functioned. I think also it's partly a result of the collapse of rail in the country, and that's why I go back to my earlier points about getting freight and logistics going again, so we can take those goods off of the road onto the rail. So I think that they are getting closer to the final end there. But it's the old problem, Ryan. The moment that you finish turning a road from a 3-lane to a 4-lane, you've got to start planning to turn it into a 5th and a 6th lane. And so you will always be under construction in that. You go to Dubai, it's the same. They're always building new roads and opening their roads up and up. That's just the nature of growth. And because we haven't done that for so long, I think that we have to catch up as we go along. There's a great project. The N2 actually is going to cut through the Eastern Cape. It's going to go through the 4 billion rand project that we're involved in, the M10 bridge. It's one of the largest suspended bridges in the world, I think it is. I was out there a couple of months ago. Amazing. So we've got to keep building roads. We've got to keep widening them, maintaining them, if you want to have a growing economy.
Dean, it's been unbelievably enlightening chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're a very busy guy. So we're going to need to wrap it up. I was about to ask you another 3 questions, but we have to wrap it up. So thank you so much. I think it's exciting and comforting to know that we have so many capable ministers. The Minister of Electricity, and you by way of example. So I'm very positive about South Africa at the moment, and I'm positive that our infrastructure is turning the corner in certain pockets. I know not across the board, but
I read your LinkedIn piece. Some people didn't agree with you, but we're going to do our best. That's for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, look, I'm flying between 2 parts of the country that are working, and again, I'm not talking about Durban Central. We as a company don't operate there, but the North Coast is people roll their sleeves up and get it done. You got this wonderful interchange that the Collins Group are funding, and then Sanroll are going to be paying them back to the best of my knowledge. And there's a lot of the electricity crisis in Ballito that happened over December. It's something that happens periodically with the extreme growth that's happening out here. There was, again, a triple P, as you referred to, a public-private partnership where local government got together with some of the developers and electrical engineers and have fixed that problem. So, Ballito works because there's lots of private investments and guys who work with government to get it done. And I think our local government and Caesar Water are very capable. And then, obviously, Cape Town's working. So I realize that other parts of the country aren't working, but we need these parts of the country to be working in order to provide a template about how we can make things work. And I think you, with your entrepreneurial mindset in government, is doing a fantastic job. So, Dean, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Great to be here. Look forward to seeing the progress as we go along, and maybe in a year's time we'll come back and tell you what else we've managed to achieve.
Definitely. Thanks, Dean.
Great.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.